There's two tires. It's going to be hard for him to hold Carl Edwards off.
Austin Dillon dropping way back. Won't be a factor.
If Harvick can hold him off, I tell you, he's Superman. That's all I can say.
Well, he held him off right there through 1 and 2, but can he do it 3 and 4?
3 wide, turn 2. Everybody gets through. Next flag ends the race. There's never been a last lap pass at Phoenix.
Here comes
Carl.
He's under him.
He's going to move him up the racetrack.
He's got him up the hill. Here he comes.
Wow, look at him slam.
It's going to be.
Whoa.
Too close to call.
I can't call that one.
Did you see them hitting one another?
I think Harvick got it by a fraction of an inch.
Welcome back, everybody. This is episode 7 of Dirty Air, your number 1 podcast, NASCAR, DFS, gambling, all that stuff related. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Baumel. You can find me at Gambling DFS Tips on Twitter. Jason, he joins us, DFS NASCAR on Twitter. Jason, what's up?
Hey, what's up, guys? Excited to be back for another week of NASCAR DFS.
And as always, the other side of the two-headed monster, Brandon Cruz, is over there. Brandon Cruz, DFS on Twitter. Brandon, what's up?
Howdy.
So we'll start this week where we always start every week. We're going to review last week's race. So, Jason, good race or bad race at Vegas last week?
Oh, from an entertainment standpoint, I think it was a good race. The first stage was phenomenal. I kind of drug out there, but we had a lot of good racing all over the track. I thought it was a pretty good race. Fantasy-wise, we found out that Kyle Larson is pretty goddamn good still. So that was definitely a big takeaway from this week. But yeah, I think all in all, it was pretty good race. Not too good in the pocketbook, but we live to fight another day.
Brandon, your thoughts? It seems like a couple of these races you haven't been the biggest fan of in terms of an entertainment standpoint. How was this for you?
It was certainly entertaining. If I was NASCAR, I'd never bring practice back. I would just never do it because this is probably the closest to an early 2000s start as we've seen in a long time, to where there's so many teams, at least, on an even playing field, where I think this is probably the best racing or the most even field we're going to have for probably the next 10 years, just because I doubt we're going to have this many teams, like I said, on the same playing field. So it offers a really good entertainment factor, and it also offers a lot of interesting things to talk about DFS wise, as we're going to get into in this episode.
All right, so Jason, something we do every week, you kind of mentioned it with Larson, although it's not a one thing you learned. That was a one thing you remembered because everyone already knew that Kyle Larson could be Kyle Larson. So last week at Vegas, what's one thing you learned?
Well, I mean, it's hard to come out of Vegas and not still feel pretty iffy about those Stewart-Haas racing cars. I mean, they all came out and disappointed again this week. Luckily, we weren't really on them as much this week, but we would have liked to seen them run a lot better. It's something that definitely you're going to take away heading into the next mile and a half. So I don't know if it correlates as much going into this week. Totally different track, different package, but definitely something to remember going into the next mile and a half.
Brandon, one thing you learned?
Well, one thing that I already knew this, but it's gaining strength and traction, is that if you're playing NASCAR DFS, you really need to change the way that you're approaching this. Like I've said it before. I've said it almost 1,000 times this season, but it is not the same NASCAR DFS that we've had to deal with years and years ago. Like post-COVID NASCAR is a completely different animal. So if you're looking at, old race stats or stats in terms of how many laps the pole sitter leads, or how well a driver is at this track, or how well is track history, how important track history is at this track. Like, you need to really throw all that stuff out the window and focus primarily on lap data and who is fast, post-COVID last year and this year. Like that's the only data that I'm looking at. I'm not looking at track history. I'm not looking at pole sitters leading laps, or what positions at certain tracks end up leading laps or winning races. Like, I'm playing guys that I expect to lead laps, and that's not necessarily always guys who are the quote-unquote dominator range in terms of DraftKings or FanDuel and pricing. Like, it's not 10K guys. It's my dominators are whoever I think are going to lead laps. Like, it's don't put yourself into a box to where you have to play dominators in the 10K range, or you have to pay a premium for place differential, because lap laps led, and fast laps are still as important as ever. And last week is a great indication of people almost forgetting that and just still paying up for people and paying a premium for place differential when you don't have to.
And so, Jason, the other side of that one thing you learned I want to do starting every week is one overreaction you're not worried about. So what is Twitter or the people in the Discord or what are people going crazy about that you're not overly worried about yet?
I mean, there's a lot of demise about Kevin Harvick and that he's washed up and done now. I'm definitely not going to make that reaction. I think they're off to a rough start, but I mean, it's Kevin Harvick. I'm not like, I guess it might be, if this is if he's going to have a year like we saw out of Kyle last year, I might be a little late realizing that, but I'm not going to overreact. Hopefully get him at some good ownership going forward.
And before I get to Brandon, the one thing I did want to say about that with Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch is the one thing I have noticed, and obviously it is a little different because these are Kevin Harvick tracks, but Kyle Busch very quickly last year, his odds reflected how Kyle Busch was running. It wasn't Kyle Busch the name value. He all of a sudden was going from 6-1. He was 10-1. He was 12-1. He was prices you hadn't seen from Kyle Busch. So Vegas has kind of caught on to that. Kevin Harvick, I know obviously it's a Phoenix track, but he's the favorite this week. So I think not only you, Jason, will be a little slow behind it. I think everyone's going to be slow behind because Vegas is still giving Harvick those Harvick odds, which obviously, him being a Phoenix track, but, he's basically the favorite with Chase this week. And obviously we know Chase has been much faster, this year, at least so far. Brandon, what's one overreaction you're not worried about? Yeah, maybe it doesn't matter yet. Maybe it's just something I'm reading into, and it's only a couple weeks because this is the third week on an oval. But definitely caught up. I know Kyle, like 2-3 races after post-COVID last year, had dropped to 12. He was in the Ryan Blaney range, and Kyle Busch and Ryan Blaney were never in the same price range, odds-wise. So, Brandon, what's one overreaction you're not worried about?
It's probably how it's not necessarily related to the drivers, but it's how people are building their lineups, like in a sense where, like, look, we're all guessing, and like nobody knows who's going to be fast. Like nobody's guessing, and we're seeing that. And I don't really care if I make somebody mad. A lot of the touts and a lot of the main sites, and they're having to do this, but they're recommending and putting in articles like place difference for guys or safe plays because they have to do that. But those aren't the guys that won the tournament last weekend. Like you have to play guys who aren't. I mean, like I said, I'm throwing out track history, but you have to play guys who are different. Like you can't just get away with playing place differential. And I don't think that we're going to see people overreact to Las Vegas and automatically get off the place differential plays. Like, for example, Harvick starting deep in the field. I think we're still going to see a huge amount of people play Harvick, not just because he's Harvick at Phoenix, but because he offers place differential and stuff. And while that tendency might be good in cash, it's not going to win you tournaments. Like the way this season has started should show you that is not the way to approach this in tournaments. So like don't be afraid to get off those safe plays because I don't think those types of safe plays are going to win you tournaments this year.
Yeah, and that's the thing when we start looking ahead to like this pricing on this week. It's like DK is pricing these guys to a point where it's very hard to fit to them and build a quality lineup because we see the value's really not been there on this slate either. So yeah, I like what you're saying about the whole not pitching yourself and think, well, I gotta cram 2 10K guys into here because I mean obviously we saw like you said Byron last week 8,300. He put up 25-30 fast laps. I mean that definitely outscored a lot of those 10K guys in that range. So I mean they're making it very hard to construct those lineups we were used to building in the past.
I mean, like, for crying out loud, you saw Blaney's ownership last weekend. Like,
well, I would think but here's the thing with a guy like Blaney, though, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I think that was more. Yes, you're saying it's a safe play, right? But I mean, I think if you're trying to pair Blaney with like 2 dominators in your lineup, that's rough. But if you're pairing Blaney with a dominator and thinking you're playing Blaney as like your second dominator, you thinking you're going to get 26 position differential points out of him, which is equivalent of like a dominator B. And then you're playing your main dominator, then you're just constructing the rest of your lineup. And you're not trying to cram in 2 doms with Blaney. You can build a pretty interesting lineup that way because it's like you're not rolling your dice on that second dominator in that lineup. You're getting a guy who most likely is going to get those position differential points as long as he just doesn't wreck.
Well, Blaney, the reason I brought him up last week is because I think a lot of people played Blaney because they thought he was going to lead laps and win the race.
Oh,
because
see, that's not the way I constructed it. Yeah, I don't think that's not the way you should have looked at it, right? I mean, Blaney.
And that goes back to what I was reading and what I was listening to last weekend. Is everybody was like, oh, if Blaney doesn't win, I gotta get rid of my Blaney shirt. I gotta get off the Blaney bandwagon. But like, if you looked at the lap data of how Blaney's going, like you're paying him for place differential because he wasn't going to lead laps. We didn't see him having that fast of a car. Sure, he got up in the top 10 and we saw the Penske guys get fast, but the ownership to like Logano and Blaney, like it. I mean, I didn't understand the reason behind it. So
I did not see Logano being owned the way he was. I didn't see that at all. I thought he was a low end play. I put him in my article that he was going to be a low end play, and he was came in at 38%. I'm like, damn, I thought that was going to be like where he was priced. Nobody would play him. So. Yeah,
and I think a lot of people played Harvick and Logano together, then Harvick and Blaney, and I mean, Jesus, dude, it's all track history. Like that's all. Everybody's playing off of.
Like how I constructed my lineups were like my Blaney lineups were like I'd play Chase, Blaney, and then Bowman with them, right? And then it gave me plenty of salary to not have to dumpster dive down in there. And it's kind of the same way I would go like Blaney, Hamlin, Bowman. That's so it's similar. I just land on the wrong guys, unfortunately.
Yeah, so it's just. I mean, I think if you're taking this stuff seriously, you really need to. Like factor in how people are perceived through track history and give them ownership right now because we don't have any practice, and then honestly like throw that away. So know that track history is going to lead to higher ownership, and then realize that is a useless stat right now, and just keep that in mind whenever you're making lineups because that's reflecting a lot of the ownership that we're seeing.
And maybe I'm wrong, but I think from a casual fan standpoint, Blaney, as I call him a secondary Penske driver because obviously with Logano and Brad having slightly more success right now. But he's, to me, will always be the name value to a casual fan over the secondary Hendricks drivers in Bowman and Byron. I think that's just a casual if you have and obviously it changes week-to-week basis, but I think people just, for whatever reason, Blaney's got that name value to the casual fan. And maybe I'm wrong, and maybe that's just a perception that I have, but I think that Blaney's one of those guys where it's like you always talk about like the Dallas Cowboys, how like they're always, when you bet them, the public's always on them. Blaney's always kind of that guy when you play him in DK. I kind of always, add 5 maybe 10% just because people do play Blaney a lot because of his potential. So maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I think on Blaney. Anything else from last week before we get to this week?
I got nothing.
Yeah, I can't think of anything.
This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Tired of losing in fantasy sports? Times are changing. Now it's just you versus the numbers. Prize Picks is the perfect place for you whether you are the biggest sports fan around or you're a seasoned vet in the daily fantasy space. On Prize Picks, you simply select 2 to 5 players and predict if they will go over or under their fantasy projection. Think Denny Hamlin is going to win the big race? Take his over and win real cash today. Prize Picks gives you the chance to win 10 times your money for getting 4 predictions correct. Entries are so simple. They can be made in less than 60 seconds. Sign up today at prizepicks.com or on the Prize Picks app and use code DIRTYAIR, that's DIRTYAIR, DIRTYAIR, to get a 100% match on your first deposit up to $100. Prize Picks truly is daily fantasy simplified. All right, so let's go to this week. The Instacart 500, Phoenix Raceway, 500 miles, 312 laps, 75 lap stage 1, 115 stage 2, 122 stage 3. For the first time, we're seeing stage 2 and 3 be closer in terms of the amount of laps as opposed to stage 1 and 2. The defending champion is, of course, Chase Elliott, won the championship here last year. Logano won the other race last year here at Phoenix. And an interesting stat that I did come across was Logano, the only driver, both Phoenix races last year to top 5. So that's where we're at right now. We can go and kind of go through some guys. Brad starts on the pole, Larson second, Denny and Chris Bell right behind him. Jason, what are your initial thoughts on this week?
Well, I haven't, like I said, I know salaries came out right before us, so I just barely glanced at them. But obviously Brad Keselowski there starting on the pole is going to be a very popular play. He's been very strong on the flat tracks last year. I know, Brandon, so I guess we need to talk because what tracks are you looking at? Because right now the tracks I'm looking at as far as from last season are Phoenix 36, Martinsville 35, Richmond 28, New Hampshire 20, Martinsville 11, and Phoenix 4, the flat tracks.
Jason's asking the questions now, I guess.
Well, because no, I know cause he's the one who we're going because he's fucking a totally different approach. So I just want to.
No, I think it's smart.
Yeah, I'm going to be looking at obviously the Phoenix races. I'm going to consider obviously Keselowski was the best on the flat tracks last year. So obviously I'm going to put into account the Phoenix races from last year, Martinsville, New Hampshire. I'm really going to be looking at the Daytona road course data, and not necessarily who was fast there, but just who had speed in general. Not necessarily if they won or finished in a certain area, but who was faster than who. I haven't dove into that yet, but the road courses this year are going to be really important for me going into the short tracks because as wild as it may sound, they go hand in hand in who's fast and who isn't fast. So those will probably be the tracks that I'm looking at.
Okay, so we're pretty similar. I think you threw the road course in there. So, yeah, Brad Keselowski starting from the pole. He's going to obviously be the obvious favorite for the field to at least lead a chunk of this race in the beginning. Kyle Larson, I think we talked, 9,600 coming into this week. It seems like he way underpriced this guy considering, top six finishes or something in his last 6 races. It may even be better than that. I know he had
6 top 6 is his last 8 here. He's got one bad race where his engine blew at 40th. I think the other was like a 25th, but the others are 6 top 6 is his last 8 races.
Finished 4th here last year. In this, when we saw the speed that Hendrick has showed up to the tracks. I mean, Kyle Larson at that price, I mean, that's on the front row. We see a lot of points scored off the front row historically in these flat tracks. I mean, flat tracks is a place where that track position matters, and starting up front does tend to lead to dominator points. It leads to fast laps when the clean air. So Kyle Larson's a favorite there for that. Yeah.
So we can go through salaries in a little bit, but Brandon, I got a question for you from just a car standpoint before we get into specifically the guys for this week. So when you talk about a guy like Kyle Larson moving to Hendrick, people would assume better equipment than what he had at Chip Ganassi at the 42. The guys in these, I guess, in the ownership groups, do they have the same cars basically in the same packages, or are they built towards the driver? So is Larson, Bowman, and Byron and Chase, are they all having similar cars, or are they built differently towards the driver?
The cars are built very similar, and then the setups are leaning more towards the driver. But comparing Larson to Ganassi, I mean, you got to give credit to, yet again, Matt Kenseth, because he got a lot out of it last year, because Ross Chastain is driving like he's never been into a vehicle before in his life. That's a horrible, horrible car. So obviously you're giving Kyle Larson upgrade. And, I mean, you really have to just bump up Hendrick in general, because you have to look at where some of these teams are in terms of the next gen car, and I would say more the smaller teams, maybe not necessarily this package, because we don't go to this package nearly as much as the other one, because this is the high horsepower, low downforce package. But a lot of the smaller teams, this is going to be, their main chance to actually have a competitive car, actually be fast this year. And so we're going to see some teams go all in on this year and kind of, not really have a whole lot of resources going into or focusing on next year in the Gen 7 car, whereas some of the bigger teams might be focusing on the Gen 7 car more, which I would make an argument for Stewart-Haas doing that, although I don't think they're nearly as bad as everybody else thinks they are. They're guessing on the setup, just like we're guessing on drivers, and they just, like Harvick and Childers, just happen to guess wrong starting this year, because they said last year they were guessing about 50% of the races, and so that's why you either saw Harvick not do anything or just kill the entire field, and they're just doing the same thing again this year. I think Hendrick and Penske are really putting all their eggs in the 2021 package, in the 2021 year versus the 2022 car.
So, and Jason, the question I had for you that Brandon mentioned briefly. So the 42 of Ross Chastain, obviously Kyle Larson had some success in it. Matt Kenseth, was kind of just did what he did last year. In terms of that's been one of the bigger surprises for me this year, especially seeing some of the other smaller teams catch up to these bigger teams, because Ganassi was always one of those middle teams that was closer to the top teams, in terms of their thing. So is Chastain a complete, you're not even looking at him until you see something out of that car, or, it's got to be a surprise for you. The 42 is that bad right now, right?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, especially where he's been starting at and where he's been priced at. Yeah, he's not really a guy I've been looking at this point. I mean, the Ganassi. I mean, Kurt Busch has been running pretty solid. So I mean, I think it has a lot to do with just Chastain just trying to get caught up to the field. And I know he ran in the back of the field a lot last year, so he should have some experience. So he's just blowing his opportunity here. It seems like Watermelon man is. I had high hopes for him, but
sorry, man. I'm breaking hearts, man. I'm breaking Bubba's heart. I'm breaking Chastain's heart.
I'll to break Newman's heart, but that didn't happen.
I'll smash it. Right, but to kind of pivot on this week, like, I mean, with what Brandon's saying about how, Penske and Hendricks looks great, and now you got Penske is coming to a track style that they've just flat dominated on. I mean, definitely all these Brad Keselowski, I mean, Joey Logano, even Blaney, and even, I mean, Matty D. I mean, they all ran very well in these flat tracks, and I expect them to all run very well again this week.
So at a race like Phoenix, Jason, how you construct the lineup in terms of Brandon's favorite word, dominators versus guys in place differential?
Well, I mean, I think the most important thing to remember about Phoenix is being a flat track, and track position matters, right? Flat tracks tend to have the lowest variance of position differential. So we see a lot less position differential points scored on these flat tracks. Typically, you want to chase those guys who are going to stay on the lead lap and who can finish well. That's where the majority of points scored. Now, yes, there are going to be some potential position differential guys that do work out. But generally, I mean, even on this, I think we only average around 18 quality passes per driver on flat tracks. So, I mean, it's just very hard to move through the field. So you got to keep that in mind when building lineup, that you're going to find a lot of value in these guys who are starting inside that top 12, top 14 range, who can just run inside that range and finish strong and return some value for you.
And so we normally don't go through salaries because we record on Tuesday night, but this week we are recording Wednesday night. So we can go through some of the salaries. Brandon, I'll start with you with the guys at the top. Kevin Harvick's 11.9, Chase is 11.5. Joey 11.1, Kyle Busch is 10.8, Brad 10.4, and Truex is 10.1. Those are the guys over 10. What jumps out to you?
Tim, let me answer this differently because I think this is going to be important. Let me tell you the guys that I think are going to be popular plays if you're looking at place differential or just in general. So I think people are going to like Harvick, Elliott, Logano, Truex, Keselowski, Hamlin, Larson, Blaney for your top guys, whereas I would argue the guys that I like, and this is kind of answering your question, the guys that I like would be Elliott, Keselowski, Larson, Alex Bowman, Byron. And so I'm going to just enter this week, and I haven't made any projections yet, but this is kind of the same situation of how I started this episode, where I'm not looking at specifically what price range I'm in. I'm playing guys that I think are going to finish in the top 5. Like, I'm going to be looking at guys who typically run short track races. What is their top 5 percentage, like, of laps led? Like, how many laps are they running inside the top 5? How many laps are they run inside the top 10? That's going to give you an indication of who's going to be, there to possibly lead laps this weekend. And so I don't necessarily look at salary. I just look at who I think, who I project are going to lead laps, and I go from there. And so salary for me really doesn't mean much. So then
shouldn't Joey Logano be on that list?
I mean, I don't think Logano is going to lead a whole lot of laps. I know, looking at his history, I mean, if you look at, and this is when I'm looking at track history because I wanted to see where everybody's looking at. He finished 3rd last year in the fall, won the spring race. His average Phoenix finish is 14th, but that's not with where is he? Like, this wasn't the same car that Bowman was running last year. This isn't the same car that Larson was running last year. We obviously have Keselowski and Larson starting on the pole. There's a good chance that those are the two guys that I'm going to project to lead laps, and they just happen to be starting 1 and 2. So I don't think Logano is really going to fit into a lot of lineups, and it really hinders your ability to make lineups with that price tag of 11.1. So are you paying for the place differential? Are you paying for his 9th starting position? If that's the case, I think he's going to be outscored by guys who lead laps. And if I don't project him to lead laps and he's at 11.1, what is his value going to be? Like a 4.8, 4.9, even a 5.0? I don't think he necessarily works in a lot of lineups. So I think people like Logano, people like Harvick are going to severely hinder your ability to make lineups because you're going to be at the bottom of the barrel of the DraftKings guys like looking at the 5K, looking at the 4K to try and make a lineup work. And I think, paying up for just example, Harvick and Logano, that's just going to really hurt your lineup. Like if you put them together, you got 6,700 to make a lineup work. And I think that's the wrong way to go about it in terms of making a lineup this week.
So, Jason, the guys he talked about at the top that he wasn't as much interested in, Harvick, Logano, Kyle, and Truex. Any interest in those guys for you? I know it's still an early look, but...
I going into this, I like Logano. Average finish of third on the flat tracks last year, and his variance is a 1. I mean, he's either finished top 3 in all these races. Phoenix average running position rank of first, average running position rank of third at Martinsville, first at Richmond, third at New Hampshire, first at Martinsville, second at Phoenix. I mean, he was always running towards the front last year on these flat tracks. And to think in that Penske car and the way Penske's came out of the gate, I mean, I'm definitely going to have some shares of Joey Logano this week. I know. I mean, what's his price tag?
He is 11-1.
And what's Chase?
11-5.
Okay, so I mean he's still under Chase. So yeah, I definitely I like Joey. My favorite plays was Joey, Chase, and Larson. I like Keselowski, Byron, Kurt Busch. These are the guys in this top 12 range, I guess, starting positions as well.
And I mean, Kyle Larson's got to be the highest owned guy, right? At 9.6K. I mean, he's going
to be, right?
Not even close. No, there's no way. No.
Every week, the guy who they've mispriced down that 9,800 range has been high priced. I mean, high owned. I mean, Harvick at 9,600, 9,800 last week was 50%. Who was before him? Denny Hamlin, right? He was still 35%, and that was with a penalty.
Why is he 9.6 and Brad's 10.4 and Kyle's 10.8?
Track history.
Larson's track history, but Larson's track history, he's got 6 top 6s his past 8 here. I mean, it's not like he's run bad here.
Yeah, but that wasn't a bad car. People forget how, like, DraftKings is building in to their prices of what these guys have ran and what equipment. Yeah, sure, his finishes are 4th, 6th, 3rd, 18th. But if you look at where he's performed DFS-wise in those races, spring 2020 last year, he had the 10th most DFS points. Fall 2019, 7th most. Spring 2019, 4th most. And so he's still being outscored by people like Chase Elliott. Like, Chase Elliott's last 2 DFS numbers have been 1st and 3rd. When you look at Joey Logano, his DFS points have been 2nd, 3rd, and 13th. If you look at Kevin Harvick, he's been 8, 1, 6, 10 his last 4. And so when you look at how Kyle Larson has performed it with DraftKings points, Larson hasn't been the best performer there. So that's why his price is at 9.6, whereas other guys are pushed up. That's what I mean by like track history, and maybe I should start saying DFS history, because I think that's what's making these guys be mispriced and stuff, just because they're not performing that well in terms of their salaries.
So, and I guess the question for you
what's
is
BK priced at and Brad Keselowski priced at? Because I don't have him in front of me. Sorry,
he's 10.4.
So that's probably one of the best values on the slate. 10.4 for Brad Keselowski from the pole, but he's going to be popular, like you said. But I mean, it's hard to imagine him not.
Can you play Keselowski and Larson together?
Last week's show, yeah.
And so realistically, assuming, let's say they both finish top 5, how many laps or how many total Dom points are you looking for if you play them both together from each of them?
You want at least one to hit that 50 mark, I would think. I mean, and you would score well as long as the other one picks. I mean, you obviously want to, you want to hit both the guys that score 50 Dom points, right? Is what you want to do. But I mean, I think if you hit one of those guys and the other guy at least finishes top 3 and picks up 15 to 20, you're still going to walk out with a pretty good score.
And so, Brandon, my initial thought in this middle range was there's no way you can click Blaney at 9.3 over Larson at 9.6. I mean, I guess if you could play them both, if that's, the route you want to go. But those 6 place differential points, that's not worth it for, this Larson 9.6 versus Blaney 9.3, is it to you?
It all depends on what you project them at. Like I said, I don't have my projections in or anything, so I'm not really able to answer questions like that. Let me just look and see what they would be. I can answer this.
I mean, it's hard to imagine Blaney outscoring Larson, right? I mean,
yeah, I mean, I would think you'd have to have some sort of an issue for Larson for that to happen.
How many laps is the race? 312?
312, yeah.
Yes.
All right, so if you're, this is answering, let me see what question. This is answering more your Keselowski Larson situation. You have to remember that laps led are pretty much non-existent. Like, that is not the factor that I focus on when I'm making lineups. I'm focusing on fast laps. And even though there's a lot of laps, you need to really pay attention to how many points you get. Like, for example, 50 laps led is only 12.5 DraftKings points. 50 fast laps is 22.5. So if you're building a lineup with those two together, you need to hope that one is leading and the other one is getting fast laps, or vice versa. Like, if one guy is kind of hogging both of them, it's going to hurt your lineup. Like last week, that's why I said last week showed, because you had Byron, Elliott, Larson getting fast laps and laps led, and they were basically flip-flopping back and forth throughout the entire race. Like, those are the situations to where if you project that happening, if you project those guys being the fastest cars and getting those fast laps and laps led, that's when you build lineups around both those guys. In terms of Ryan Blaney, he's an example of what I want to see. I want to see what he did in the road course, not in terms of where he finished, but where he was in terms of speed, because Blaney at his price, like, that's where I want to play Blaney. No, I'm not saying I'm playing him right now, but that price is the price that I want to be paying for him. I don't want to be paying for him when he's like 10-1 or whatever. But when you see Ryan Blaney at 9-3, that's probably the lowest he's been in a long time. I mean, just this year, other than the Busch Clash at Daytona, he was 86 there. But I'm pretty sure in actual seasons, that's probably the cheapest we've seen Blaney in a long time. So in situations like that, where Blaney had a fast car in the spring race last year, he just got in the wreck, and then he had a fast car in the fall. Like, this is pointing to, hey, this is a week where, Blaney will probably be a guy that I'm looking at and I want to dive into. I'm not just going to blindly play him at 1.5 miles, but I'm going to look at his lap data, and if it's pointing towards, Phoenix, that's when I want to start looking at Blaney.
So I guess the question for that is, it's not Blaney or Larson, it's probably Blaney and Larson if you're going to Blaney.
I don't have enough to answer to. I don't.
But I'm saying, like, in this price range, you're in a price range, this middle range, where generally you can be playing more of these guys and not have to dip down in that 4K range like you were talking about earlier, 4 or 5K range. Because I guess that's kind of what you're trying to avoid, right?
Let me. I mean, it all goes back to me playing who I think are going to lead laps. One thing that I did tell people last week, and I think we're going to see it a lot this year, is I'm personally going to be building a lot more lineups, locking off the 10, not using the 10K range and not using the 5K range. So I'm going to be building a lot with 6, 7, 8, and 9K guys. If it's races where I think those guys can lead laps, I don't think it's necessarily going to be this week, because I think, well, I guess Larson's in the 9K range. But I'm not going to be maxing out my salary. I'm not going to be paying for the guys at the very top. I'm going to be, if you want to call them balanced lineups, that's kind of how I'm going to be going. But if you look at all the mispricings in the 9 and 8K and even in the 7K range, like, it's just, first glance, it's looking like weeks like that. Hamlin's under 10, Larson's under 10, Blaney's under 10, Bowman's under 9, Byron's under 9. You have Bell barely over 8, Kurt Busch in the 7K range, Austin Dillon in the 7.4. I mean, if you wanted to just use a player pool of the guys I just mentioned there, like, I wouldn't blame you. And I'm probably going to have a lineup just including those guys. And so I'm not really caring about salary this year. That's really what I'm noticing. I think that's probably the thing I'm noticing more, is I'm just looking at raw points and not necessarily salary.
And so, Jason, the one guy that he skipped over that he didn't talk about, any interest for you in Eric Almirola in 9K starting 30th? Or 32nd, sorry.
I don't think I'm going to have very much Eric Almirola. I mean, he's historically, I guess you could say, he's ran well at these tracks. Average finish at 12th last year on these flat tracks. So the way Stewart Haas has opened up, and with, like I said, it's hard to pass on these tracks. I mean, you're banking on needing a ton of not dominator points, position differential points. I think you probably would need like a top 12, just off the top of my head, somewhere around there. And it's just unrealistic to see Elmorel, especially with the start he's having now. I don't have any interest in him. But like I said, I haven't started constructing lineups, but I can't imagine me having too much Eric Almirola.
I guarantee you that there's going to be a lot of websites pushing Eric Almirola. Because if I'm playing cash, which I don't, if I'm not playing with cash. But if I'm playing cash, I would see Eric Almirola probably being the most owned guy.
I think, position differential wise, if you're looking position differential here, is you're looking at a guy like Bowman here in 21st, and even a guy like Matty D 20th. I think that's where your potential for probably 12, 13 position differential points are going to come from.
Yeah, and even piggybacking off of what you mentioned with his place differential, like this is yet again you're paying for a premium for place differential. There's 312 laps, 78 laps for laps led, 140.4 for fast laps. Why am I gonna spend that much money on Eric Almirola when I could spend actually lower and get guys who can get me fast laps consistently?
But conversely, if that was Brad Keselowski starting 32nd for like 10,000, he would be a great play.
So, all right, let's drop down into this next range, and I think it's in terms of these are the kind of guys that you're not expecting to lead laps as much. Maybe you're hoping for some of it out of some of these guys, but more just some fast laps or good place differential and then some good finishing position. Reddick's at 7.9, Kurt Busch at 7.7, Briscoe at 7.5, Austin Dillon at 7.4.
I don't have it listed that way. I can't keep up that way. I don't have it listed that way. I have it listed by starting position.
So, all right. So here, we'll do this. Reddick, Kurt, and Briscoe, 7.9, 7.7, 7.5. Any interest in any three of those guys for you?
Reddick, Kurt Busch,
and
yes.
Briscoe.
I have some Kurt. Yes, I do like me some Kurt Busch. Average finish of 10th last year in these flat tracks. We saw some speed last year at Phoenix. The fall race, he had the 7th best average position, 4th best at Martinsville. He's been running very solid to start the year, starting 12th. He's one of these guys that I think that we can run right around where he's starting at, stay on the lead lap, get a late restart. You never know. We can get a top 7, top 6 out of Kurt Busch there. So I definitely like some Kurt Busch. Tyler Reddick's going to be popular starting 23rd. He struggled out of the gate, it seems like. This is a track type that he has had some speed at in the past. So I'm really kind of undecided. What price range is this? Like 7K, you said? High 7K?
7.9, 7.7, and 7.5 for these three guys.
Yeah.
Brandon, Reddick, Kurt, Briscoe, Austin Dillon. Any interest in those guys for you?
Yeah, I got a lot of interest in Kurt Busch. Obviously he's mispriced. I think Austin Dillon's a good play.
We saw some speed out of him in Martinsville. New Hampshire, right? Austin Dillon? Richmond. He ran really well at.
Yeah, I like Christopher Bell. I have to mess around with projections to see if he can work. Yeah, sure. His street name, Chris Bell, wanted for manslaughter, starting 4th at 8,100. I got to mess around and see if he can work, but I don't mind that. Reddick, this is a place where I want to play Reddick. I'll look into his lap date. I know he was fast in the spring race last year when he was running the high side, which he can do. We also need to remember that not only has Phoenix changed a lot, this data has changed a lot. It's a drastically different race track the last 2 years than it has ever been, because 2011 they tore up the track, repaved it, and so it was a one groove racetrack for nearly 7 years. And trust me, because I was at all 7 of those years of racing. The racing sucked. It was one groove, nothing could happen. Then they reconfigured it, so they got rid of the grass, and you really didn't see a whole lot of people consistently diving through the dog leg and stuff. Maybe you saw people running the yellow line in turns 1 and 2, and then it would set them up for a fast run down the back straightaway. But now the pavement's getting older. They're going to put PJ1 down again. You're seeing guys run the high side in turns 1 and 2 right against the wall to try and get momentum down the back straightaway. You're seeing guys running nearly at the inside wall in turns 1 and 2. These guys are on the apron. They're all over the place. So looking at that's why I specifically want to look at Tyler Reddick's laps again, because I'm pretty sure he was getting fast laps running the outside at Phoenix in the spring. I want to see
the 15th and 17th ranked average position at both Phoenix races last year. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, he finished 33rd in one of. He finished 33rd and 19th in one of those. So, that should bring that position down a bit. So, Reddick at $7,900. If I see things that pop off that I want to look at, or that when I'm looking at him and I see things that pop off, I'll probably end up going more to Reddick than some people might want to do initially. Chase Briscoe, not interested in. He's struggling a lot, which is, I didn't expect him to struggle at Homestead, but him struggling at Las Vegas just shows that he's going to struggle in this package. I need to see improvement from him. I don't think it's necessarily SHR. I think it's him in general. Bubba Wallace, this is usually one of his better tracks at 7,200. If people are hesitant to play, if people are
I wasn't even going to ask you about Bubba.
So if people are hesitant to play Bubba, I'm going to play him. Last week I played him, and he got a lot of fast laps in the back. I think he was off cycle because he was, those 3 or 4 laps down, and the field was so bad that he was like 4 or 5 laps down, and he still finished like 28th or 27th. I think right behind of Suarez, and so that's showing me that car it has the speed. These guys can't build a motor correctly. It just leaks all over the place. He's losing power. He had an oil leak. He lost power steering, and he still finished the race. They didn't take it behind the garage. They fixed it on pit road. That's what I want to see from Bubba. And he's going to get fired, so he needs to run well. And so, this group of guys, if this is the lowest I go in a lineup, I'm going to be super happy.
So then I guess I'm going to go through a couple of the guys that stuck out to me towards the bottom. Jason, some value guys. I know you're not really looking at the salaries, but if there's anybody that I don't mention, let me know. But Cole Custer was somebody at 6'7" that jumped out. Daniel Suarez and Anthony Alfredo are both sub 6K. They're 5'9" and 5'8". And then I don't really think there's any need to go below that 5K range into those true punts. Any interest in Suarez or Alfredo?
I mean, if you're going that low, that's where you're going to go. That's where, that's what I mean about this value range. There's nothing there. Just down below the 6K range, this low 6K range, if we looked at just the last 2 weeks, just has not been providing us the value. Most of these plays kind of make you want to throw up a little bit in your mouth. Do we want to go back to the Cole Custer well after last week? I have a feeling nobody else is going to be on him. And obviously, it's like I said, it's a flat track. It's Stewart-Haas could nail this setup going into this track, starting 24th, so he doesn't have to do too much probably in this price range to really hit value. So, I guess there is some interest there in Cole Custer, but, yeah, I'm trying to – definitely you're not going to be wanting to cram 2 of these guys in your lineup this week.
And Brandon, I think the other guys outside of Suarez and Alfredo that might get a couple looks down here just because of where they start or the name value. LaJoie is 6K. He starts 33rd. But I think Ryan Preece, Ryan Preece and Ricky Stenhouse, 5'6" and 5'5", obviously
Ricky
not
Stenhouse is down there?
Yep, starting 11th.
Damn.
That's what I was going to say. I think the name value is down there, but I think obviously him starting 11th hurts him. But 11th's not like it's too far. It's not like he's starting top 5. It's not like he's got literally no place differential.
At that price, what's he going to finish? Maybe 14th, maybe? Something like that?
I haven't done the math, but I would assume something like that and obviously Stenhouse is one of those name guys.
Yeah, I'm not pushing to put Ricky Stenhouse at 5,500 starting 11th in my lineup just so I can cram in yeah. So out of
Suarez, Alfredo, Preece, and Ricky, which do you think you're most likely to play?
Let's see here. Probably Alfredo. Only because he's starting furthest back. I don't know. Yeah. Suarez, he showed some speed too. It's 127th. Yeah, I guess it would probably go Alfredo, Suarez, and Stenhouse.
And Brandon, in terms of just the actual cars between Suarez and Alfredo, who do you think has the better equipment? Because Suarez basically in the track house, basically an RCR car, and Alfredo has kind of been the only one I would say that hasn't. McDowell showed some speed this year, I guess. Alfredo really hasn't shown it. In terms of the equipment, who do you think has the better equipment, or do you think it's on pretty much the same level?
No, it's Suarez by a mile.
So does that make you more interested in a guy like Suarez and Alfredo since they're basically starting in the same position?
Well, yeah, because fast pasta is more like, moldy cafeteria pasta at this point. I think
Brandon jumps off these. You have a couple bad races, and Brandon thinks that you are.
I never said Alfredo was going to be good. He's doing exactly what we thought he was going to do. I said that before the season started. He's putting himself. He took the first contract in the Cup Series, and I said it in this podcast too. He took the first contract in the Cup Series he's had, and now he just signed on to run 25th his entire career.
Well, I'm just saying from a standpoint of like value returned, if you look down in this range, the value return of about 4x the last couple of weeks has been the best in this range aside from like Priest last week, but I mean, if you're going down this deep, like there's not a ton of value down here. I don't know. It's just
I'm going to go back to the question that you asked Jason earlier in this value range. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not playing LaJoy. Alfredo, probably not, because I haven't played him so far this year. I haven't liked his ownership, and it hasn't killed me. I'm still interested in Suarez. I think
nobody's been playing Alfredo, by the way. Nobody's been playing.
Yeah, because I mean,
his ownership's been down.
I mean, he's a bad play. He's probably the safest, and like he's safe because he's going to finish 25th. He's bad because he's going to finish 25th. Like he just said, he was getting like a 4x value. Like that's horrible. Last week we saw Priest be optimal. I had some Priest. I think that's especially at Phoenix, to where I think a lot of guys are going to hold their position, especially this far back. I know Priest is starting 15th, Stenhouse is 11th, but Alfredo, Suarez, LaJoy, these guys starting where they are, I don't see them going through the field. Depending on where I am in my lineups, I think I'm going to have a lot of Stenhouse, a lot of Priest, a lot of McDowell, a lot of Busher. Like, I think those are going to be the value plays that I go with. Not necessarily thinking that, they're going to get top 10 finishes and stuff. But I think, let me go ahead and I'm going to do this live while you guys talk. I'm going to see who I project to be the best play out of these guys while we talk. And we can come back to this, and I'll see what I have.
So I'll say, while you look that up, I got a question for Jason. I'll ask you this after. But so, Jason, we did this earlier with Newman. I believe there's 32 races left in the year. How many top 10s for Chase Briscoe, if any?
Let's call it 2. Maybe 3. Maybe picks it up towards the last half. We'll go 3.
Okay. Brandon, how many top 10s for Chase Briscoe the rest of the year while you're looking that up?
Give him 3. I think he'll get better in the year.
Well, that game's no fun when you guys guess the same amount.
I don't even.
I'm gonna guess 4. And that's where we'll be at.
We'll put that on the board. What are we gonna bet on
it? We'll bet. I don't know. If one of us loses, we'll have to edit the podcast for a week.
Drop it. And like with me, which is why
I mean, you are right. That is where we've seen the value at, though, Brandon. We've seen. I mean, a lot of the values came from that low 6K range, not necessarily below 6K, and have been those guys starting in that 20th, 18th, 19th, 17th range and just holding position.
And this is, I mean, for me, I'd love diving down into the data like this. That's why I love doing the live shows later in the week, because this is when I like messing around with lineups and seeing who fits where, who does where. I'm almost done here. Give me another.
So Jason, while he's doing that, real quick, we haven't talked as much about the Raceway. How does Phoenix differ from Homestead and Vegas? Obviously, all intermediate tracks, different tire wear and stuff. Is this more tire wear, fuel race? Neither really matter.
Tire wear, yeah, it's a flat track. It's a mile track, but it does. Oh, not a mile. It's like 3/4 of a mile. But it runs a lot like a short track. I don't think it's classified as a short track, but flat track.
So, are you more likely to compare? Sorry, are you more likely to compare this week to a Martinsville as opposed to a Bristol or Richmond to Martinsville?
I like to look more towards your New Hampshires and Richmond, but yeah, I definitely look at Martinsville as well for track history, because like I said, these flat tracks, they all pretty much take the same kind of setups to get around. And typically guys who are good at one are typically good across the board on these tracks. You like for those guys who typically are just solid at all these different flat tracks they go to.
So, and we didn't talk as much about him while Brandon's finishing this up. Truex seems offhand to be a decent flat track racer. What are your thoughts on Truex?
Yeah, he's obviously runs very well at Martinsville, Richmond, New Hampshire. He struggled here in the fall. But yeah, I mean, he's definitely like when you're looking at these guys, I mean, they're all great plays. I mean, Martin Truex, he could start in 5th. I mean, I could definitely see him getting up and potentially leading some laps, but I don't know if I'm really going there this week.
All right, so I finished this, and so this is the big reveal. Who is the value play of the week? And this is
has the scientists come out of
on Wednesday. So this is looking at Stenhouse, Priest, McDowell, Chris Buescher, Suarez, Alfredo, LaJoie in this area. I would have Stenhouse, and this is early projections, so this is just an example. I would have Stenhouse projected for 20 points. I'd have Priest projected for 16. McDowell projected for 29. Chris Buescher projected for 30. Suarez projected for 25. Anthony Alfredo projected for 18. And Corey LaJoie projected for 22. Do with that as you will.
Okay.
Jason, what does that information mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely down on Alfredo there. But yeah, it definitely makes sense because Mike Dow has been running. I mean, when you punch him in for, I don't know, like that 17th, 18th place finish, yeah, that is solid points. So, yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. He's not showing much love to Anthony Alfredo. What's an 18 points? Where's that put him at finish wise?
I just delete everything off. I mean, I'm giving him. Oh, I gotta really go back. I deleted everything again. Sorry. I gave him. It's looking at like 26th, 25th, 24th. That's where around the 18th mark. Let me bump Alfredo up. Let's give him 22nd. What is that? That's around 28 points. Let's do 21st. It's gonna be around 29, 30 points, depending on if he gets any fast laps or whatnot. So, in order for Alfredo to get around 30 points or whatever, he's gonna need to be 21st, 20th. And this is kind of me doing it in my head here because I deleted everything again.
Yeah.
So okay. I mean, Alfredo's going to have to. I mean, Alfredo has to do so well, and to outscore just the guys in his range. It makes it really hard for him to work out.
So let's go through the odds real quick, just before we finish and go through any more final thoughts. But just to go through some early week odds, obviously can change throughout the week. Chase Elliott the favorite, 5.5 to 1. Harvick and Brad are both 6.5 to 1. Denny is 7 to 1. Joey 8 to 1. Kyle 8 to 1, which is once again a surprise. Just like DK pricing, the thing that stands out to me, Kyle Larson is 10 to 1. I don't know why Kyle Larson is 10 to 1, but I will hop on Kyle Larson at 10 to 1. Some other value down here: Truex is 12, Blaney 16, Byron is 20, Bowman is 30. And then a couple of long shots that kind of stick out. I mean, I don't expect Chase Briscoe to win, but Chase Briscoe is 150 to 1. I mean, he's 150 to 1 around.
Put it on Dodge. Invest that in Dogecoin.
We talked about this the other day when he was like at 80. At this point, Briscoe should be 420 to 1.
But here's the thought behind it. Is like he's priced in the same range as these Suarez and Alfredos, and it's like he's just got so much better equipment. It's not like Chase Briscoe. Obviously, you've talked about him struggling with the package, but I don't know. I just think he's priced in a range where he shouldn't be.
So why? Okay, I'll ask you a question, Ryan. Why is Briscoe better than the guys around him? What makes him so good?
Well, let me put this back on you. Who's more likely to win this race out of Briscoe, Suarez, and Alfredo? Or do you think it's not? You think it's a toss-up? Because to me, I think I'm not saying the guys he's around he's going to run better than. I'm saying in terms of win equity, he's more likely to win this race than Daniel Suarez or Anthony Alfredo.
Let's say there's a big-ass wreck and it takes out 37 cars, and the only 3 guys left on track is Briscoe, Suarez, and who's the other guy?
Alfredo.
Chase Briscoe. Suarez is going to win. So okay, so who did Briscoe? How did he get those 8, 9, 11, whatever, how many wins in the Xfinity Series last year? Who did he beat? And I'm stealing
at Darlington.
I'm stealing Pierce's line here from his latest podcast. Who did he beat?
That's what Jason said, is that I have such a small brain, and all I remember is him holding off Kyle Busch at Darlington, and it's like, okay, Chase Briscoe can drive a race car. That's okay. I mean, my small brain, that's literally what it comprehends.
Well, let's see. He beat Justin Allgaier, who ran 20th and 30th in his Cup career. He beat Michael Annett, who ran 70th in his Cup career. He's beating up on guys who don't have talent. Oh, Rust. Oh, yeah, he's doing awesome in his Cup
but,
career.
But you still didn't answer the question in terms of win equity. Does Chase Briscoe not have them?
No,
yeah, but your situation, with everything. But obviously, but that's my point. Is they're priced together because, like you're talking about,
is Brandon burying Chase Briscoe 4 races into his career?
I'm burying this, man. Yeah, I was like, this 80-1 at Homestead, that's too low. You should take it. I'm like, no, that was a misprice. Right. He should have been, 400 to win.
And yes, he shouldn't even be in that 80-1. But like I'm talking about, the only reason he's priced here is because guys like Suarez and Alfredo have just as much of a top 20 value as Chase Briscoe does. That's the difference. They don't have the win equity he does, but they have the same top 20, top 15
There's never been
value.
so much talk over an 80-1 bet for NASCAR before ever. I can promise you that. This is
a it's 150 to 1.
Oh, I'm sorry. Then that changes.
It was.
That changes everything.
It does. It's double the price. It does. It's half the money you got to put on it.
Okay.
At 1,000 units.
Anything that we missed, Jason? Any final things you want to go?
Well, what is your thought on the Balicki story from last weekend? Because you're a betting man.
What I haven't seen that.
Balicki's sponsor, I don't know what, God forbid, his win equity was, but his sponsor
0. Yeah, 0 win equity. I saw that. The $50,000 bet or whatever it was.
Yeah. If he won, it was like $10 million payout.
That's where, and I guess Chase Briscoe does fall in this category, but that's where me and my friends, it's called a garbage can bet. You're more likely to go take your money, put in a garbage can, and more money come out than the way that you bet that. It's just so, like, I don't know. I guess it's like there's the emotional investment, and obviously I'm sure that guys like that, he's got enough money where maybe it's not a huge deal.
To charity or something.
I imagine that was every cent he had. Yes. It just makes me laugh. Yeah.
This is all I got.
His dying wish. He's like, I got this left. If this hits, I'm good.
Which we got to pay mortgage, but we need Josh Balicki to win this weekend.
Yeah. My wife left me, my kid's being taken away.
I hope none of our listeners are facing this exact situation.
And just to clarify, we do not condone this. You need to always bet and DFS responsibly, and you should never be putting your family's mortgage on it.
Well, especially, obviously any gambling, but NASCAR DFS would be a terrible sport to go and put more money than you can afford to risk, because
NASCAR and UFC
falls apart quickly.
NASCAR and UFC, it's like the two things. It's like, obviously your car crash, your guy's knocked out, DraftKings is over, time to keep going.
There's no other sport like NASCAR, though, to where you can literally just lose it all in the last minute.
The only
other sport that can do that?
Not in terms of that, no. You could lose something early by having a guy go out and just like get an injury. But yeah, I don't think I think there's
2 minutes or 2 laps, 3 laps where you could go from winning thousands of dollars to winning nothing. There's no other sport that does it.
And that's why the NASCAR tilt's real.
You can go the other way too. It feels good to be on the other end. It's like, man, I fucking caught everything that week. Whew, I'm just good.
Man, it's like, man, I put $400 down on Dak Prescott and Amari Cooper. I don't know what I went wrong. What happened? Everybody told me this was going to work.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought I was a genius with the Cam Newton MVP bet. Turns out he stinks. All right, Brandon. Anybody we missed?
You didn't have to remind anybody of that. You could have just let go that you said Cam Newton wouldn't win the MVP last year.
Okay, well. You know what? I own up to my losses. When I say something stupid, which happens a lot, I own up to it. And I said Cam Newton was going to win the MVP, and the Patriots were going to win the Super Bowl, and neither happened. And I'm more than glad to be wrong on both of those.
Okay.
Brandon, any final thoughts this week?
Don't put yourself into a box of seeing, the 10K plus guys as one tier, and you need one of those guys. 9K guys, you need one of those guys. Like, just. If you have the patience for it, project who you think is going to do well and go off at that. Don't worry about salary.
All right, so let's get to our version of the one and done, the two and done, before we finish this episode off. So last week, for the first time, my driver scored the most points. Brandon, you did have the race winner. You did have Kyle Larson, who scored 50 points. I did have Brad Keselowski, who had 52 points. Chase Elliott was obviously still a good call, just we talked about this earlier. Fixing the damage might have screwed the car up, but who knows? It was an interesting story that was going through. He had 34 points. So Jason's still in first with 146. Brandon's 142. I have 121. Jason, your driver scored the least amount of points last week. Who do you want? You have first choice.
I'm sorry. You broke up through the entire thing. You guys hear me? I hope
Yeah.
that came through.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's going on? We talked. Did he get done bragging about winning last week? Is that where we're at?
Oh,
here?
is that why the audio went out?
Oh my God. I gave you a compliment. I said it was a good pick that didn't end up well after I bragged about my pick.
Okay.
So yes.
Well, so
I'll say
I
it
get
again.
to pick first.
Yes, because Brad Keselowski scored the most points at 52, so I will pick last this week. There's my final brag.
Okay. I'll pick first. I'm gonna go Joey Logano.
What is your reason? You have the number 1 draft pick over here, and you're
Because I already used a chase. I don't want to use my other chase right now. I already used a Truex.
Have you already used Keselowski?
I think you used Chase twice, did you not?
No, I used chase
No.
once. I have not used a Keselowski.
I thought you used him at the road. Did you use him at the road course?
What's that? Did I use
think
him?
you used-
No, I didn't use chase at the road course, did I?
Yeah, because I took Blaney and Brandon
Did
took
I?
Hamilton.
So I've used chase twice?
Yep, you have used Chase twice. I mean, I'll
Son
double
of a
check.
Bitch, we're
I-
4
I
weeks
got-
in.
I've got it written down. You've taken Bubba, Chase twice, Martin once, and Logano.
I went through Chase twice in 4 weeks.
And didn't get a win out of him.
Oh man!
I really like
Didn't even
Chase
get
Elliott.
what
What can I say?
What did he finish at the road course? You didn't even get a top 10. You used Chase Elliott twice and didn't get a top 10 either time, right? Did he finish top 10 last
Correct.
week?
I don't know. Whatever.
Okay, well,
Joey
I'm
Logano.
going my pick because I'm second here, and I'm going Keselowski. Going Keselowski. Everything's
We swap picks this week because you're going to take Keselowski and I'm going to take Larson.
good luck, man. Luck, Mr. Logano boy is going to be running 9th the entire race.
It's about where they finish is on this
I
one.
just said he's
we
going to
don't
run 9th the whole race
until the last, till the end.
Okay, and then he'll finish 11th.
Wait, you really think Logano's going to run bad this week?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think there's a lot.
Well, is it just a hunch or?
Well, no. I mean, just looking at the stuff. Let me see. Let me look. Well, we can go through some of the data live. Right. Correct. Let me look.
I just curious.
Because let's see. Let's take a look at specifically. Let's look at Keselowski and Legano. Let's pin them against each other because I think that's going to be a really important decision DFS wise. So
I just mean running good. Like we're not talking DFS here. I'm just mean like you said he's not going to run good or like not condition to win. I just asked if he's going to run good.
I don't think he'll be a top 5 contender.
Okay. Because he's ran in the top 5 all year last year in these tracks. So
Brandon doesn't like my stats.
I know.
The only driver top 5 both races last year. It's okay. I'll keep my stats to myself. Although I probably won't play Joey Logano either because I don't listen to my own stats. Jason, where can they find the rest of your stuff?
free NASCARDFS.com. Follow me on Twitter at DFS NASCAR. Always free cheat sheets. I've been done some GPP pools like Coors last week. Seemed to be pretty popular. Might do that again this week. I think we got Xfinity Series and Cup Series this week, so check it out. Free NASCARDFS.com.
And Brandon, where can they find your stuff?
You can find my stuff, Brandon Cruz DFS on Twitter, Patreon, and YouTube. We got 4 shows this week. Xfinity and Cup Series show going to be recorded and released on Thursday, and then Sunday 12:30 Eastern Time on my channel, live show with Pierce, Race for the Prize, and then Sunday 10 a.m. another live show. And you can pick our brains and see where we're at, where all our points are pointing towards, as we get closer to those races. So come check us out, support us there, and be sure to give us, a 5-star review here on Apple on this. I don't know how podcasts work. I don't do podcasts.
5-star, give 2 thumbs up, high five, whatever the fuck they have on their platform. Do it.
So yeah, And obviously, everyone remember to follow me on Twitter as well, Gambling DFS Tips. Check out my website, betwithbommel.com. I'm doing a NASCAR Cup article every week, but also gambling tips for a bunch of different sports, especially UFC. But I'll have a NASCAR article up every week doing that, talking about the picks that I like and just kind of the relation to them in terms of the value. As Brandon kind of mentioned, whatever platform you may listen to us on, subscribe, rate, review, like, whatever it asks you to do, all of it helps us. We definitely appreciate everyone. Thank you guys for listening to this week's episode of Dirty Air. We'll be back next week. We're going Atlanta next week. So we'll be back next week for Atlanta. On behalf of Jason and Brandon, as always, I'm Ryan Baumel. Thank you guys for listening, and this best of luck this week in Phoenix. Thanks, guys.